This week we're demonstrating motivated camera movement, and more specifically, the three main reasons why you would move the camera in a certain shot. Here's the first question to ask yourself. Is your camera move motivated by an emotion? Let's start simple. Here we have the classic example of a push in to accentuate a character's reaction. Depending on the actor's performance, it could be used when a character sees someone who they haven't seen in years, or if they're having to make a really big decision. We're intensifying the moment by bringing the audience closer and closer to the character. Now you could say that camera movement is like punctuation in books. In this case, it's taking the role of an exclamation point. But there's definitely a lot more to it than that. Now for this next one, you're going to have to imagine that our character is out in a mountainous wasteland and that they've been stranded for weeks until this happens. The camera rises up just as the character finally sees a rescue helicopter on the horizon of the canyon. Now it's really difficult to put this into words, but think of the association with moving upwards, how it would feel to take flight like a bird, or to climb up really high to look over a city. This is one way we could justify that moving the camera upwards works well for the scene, because we can make ties between the emotion of lifting the audience off their feet and what's happening in the story. But this is also an example of our second reason to move the camera, when it's motivated by something else moving. Now this is a really common way to help a camera move look natural, whereas if the camera isn't following anything, if it's just moving through a static space, it draws a lot of attention to the move itself, which might be what you're going for, but next time you watch a movie, notice how often the camera is following something else within the frame. For instance, this scene, which is heavily inspired by Double Indemnity. Here we have a main character talking about how they work in a shop. That gives the other character an idea. He paces, clearly thinking about something, and then he gets an idea. He curiously asks if that means that he has keys to the shop. Evidently, he does have the keys, and suddenly our character becomes very interested. Now, watch again. When he gets up, the camera tilts up. He's now on higher ground, taking control of the scene. The camera follows him because it's motivated by his movement. The character paces up and down. We know he's thinking something through. He then stops, having made his decision to ask about the keys. And now, once he has, he closes the distance between them because he can see the value of those keys. As an audience, we start to ask questions. Why is he so interested in the keys? Does he want to steal something from the shop? There was nothing in the dialogue directly suggesting that. And if you watch the original scene from Double Indemnity, which I'll put on the blog post, you can see how a good actor can show just through their face expression and the way that they move that they're definitely up to something. So it's worth watching a film to see just how often they use a simple pan and a simple tilt in a shot, and more importantly how well they integrate it using the movement of the actors and the blocking for all the different things in the scene. Now let's go back to one of our earlier shots. It also has our third reason to move the camera, to hide or reveal something. Just as the character discovers the rescue helicopter, we as the audience also discover it. Now, had we used this shot in a survival film, after the audience has seen the character's long struggle in the wilderness, then the audience would have felt the same kind of relief that the character did, no dialogue required. But hang on a minute, why not shoot it like this, tilting up instead of booming up? In this case, I could probably say that tilting up isn't quite as good because our character isn't tilting his head, he's actually moving up through the space. So having the camera reflect that might be a more powerful option. Because that's our main goal here, to justify why a certain camera movement would be more effective than just leaving the camera static on a tripod. And it's based on the emotion, it's based on movement within the frame, and it's based on whether we are hiding or revealing something. And I'll leave you with this. On its own, camera movement is worthless. But when you combine it with the performance of the actors and all the information you've already given the audience, it can be very powerful. We said before that camera movement is like punctuation in writing, and it still applies. The sentence does most of the work, but then the punctuation just helps to steer it in the right direction. Now on the blog post I'll put some annotated examples of my favourite camera moves in cinema, but my name's Simon Cade, this has been DSLR Guide, and I'll see you next week.